Welcome to this Allinea tutorial video. The objective of this video is to help you configure a custom SSH configuration in order to get your Allinea remote client up and running on your Windows workstation. Allinea Remote Client for Windows relies on a free open source tool called PuTTY, also known as Plink, which is part of the PuTTY toolkit. The toolkit is integrated into the Allinea Remote Client for Windows package for you to use. In this tutorial, we will dive into the configuration of your local system to allow remote connection through SSH using the PuTTY toolkit. This advanced configuration is usually not required, but in certain environments, users may need to connect to a remote cluster through SSH, using a different port than the default port 22, using a set of public and private keys. In this particular case, advanced SSH configuration is required to use Allinea Remote Client on Windows. This video will guide you through these particular steps and will cover the topics that are most often asked, including access with the remote client through a proxy, the usage of SSH keys on Windows. First of all, download Allinea Remote Client for Windows from our website. Install it on your laptop or workstation. Go to Allinea Remote Client installation directory and open PuTTY. We will now create a new connection entry. The host name or IP address field contains the target connection. Typically, this field will contain the values username at cluster.domainname.com. Below the saved session string, choose the identifier for the connection. This field plays two roles. It is meant to help you organize different connections. It is used by Allinea Remote Client to identify the configuration to use to connect the remote system. Please ensure that the value you add in this field does not contain any space character. If access to your cluster does not rely on the default port 22, you can specify a different value next to the hostname or IP address field. Now, let's see how to configure PuTTY to go through proxies. On the left-hand side of the graphical interface of PuTTY, go to Connection and Proxy. Here you will have access to several options, including the type of proxy you want to go through, its name, the ports, etc. Please contact your local system administrator team if you face any difficulties with this particular aspect. If you are using an SSH key, go to the Connection, then SSH, then Auth menu. Here you can see a field called Private Key File for Authentication. Click on Browse to select your private key. Please note that the key has to be a PuTTY private key file, identified by the .ppk extension. If you have a private key file in a different format, Allinea Remote Client for Windows also comes with a tool called Puttygen. This tool allows you to convert SSH key files from a different format, for instance Open SSH, into PuTTY private key format. Once the configuration of your SSH connection is done, go back to the Session menu. Click on Save. This session is now saved in your Windows registry. To reuse this session with the Allinea Remote Client for Windows, open your Allinea Remote Client. Go to the Remote Launch menu and click on Configure. Select Add to create a new connection. In the window that appears, fill the blanks. The connection name is an identifier meant to help you organize different connections. This field plays no role whatsoever in the remote connection itself, so please feel free to use any name you want. The hostname field contains the saved session name that you entered in PuTTY. If you use this session, all the configuration that you have done, including proxies, SSH, keys, ports, etc., will automatically be reused. The installation field contains the path to Allinea Forge on the remote cluster. The remote script is an optional field. If necessary, here you can add the full path to a script that will be executed on the remote system. This is sometimes useful for loading some environment variables, for instance. Once this is set, click on OK and close. You will now be able to connect to your cluster by selecting the connection to your cluster in the Remote Launch drop-down menu. When you select a connection, an SSH tunnel will be created between the graphical interface running locally and your remote system, enabling interactive debugging and profiling of your applications running remotely with Allinea Forge. This particular tutorial only covers a very small subset of the SSH configuration options on Windows. If you feel uncomfortable configuring your SSH connection, please contact your local system administrators or refer to the PuTTY documentation available on the website www.putty.org. Thank you for watching this video and have a great day.